This is the true story of Marcus Wellington III, heir to a banking fortune, who thought intelligence was something you could buy with your family name. And this is the story of Elena Rodriguez, daughter of the Academy's cleaning lady, who carried within her mind a gift so extraordinary that it would shake the very foundations of what everyone believed about talent, worth, and destiny. What started as a moment of mockery in front of wealthy students would become a chess match that changed lives, shattered assumptions, and proved that genius doesn't care about your last name or the size of your bank account. Sometimes the most powerful moves come from the most unexpected players. The game was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. Elena Rodriguez pressed her face against the cold glass window, watching the expensive cars drop off students at Whitmore Academy. Her breath fogged the glass as she counted the luxury vehicles, 3 BMWs, 2 Mercedes, and something that looked like it belonged in a movie. Her mother Maria worked inside those grand walls, scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans for students who probably spent more on lunch than Maria earned in a week. The academy stood like a castle made of red brick and ivy, its towers reaching toward the gray October sky. Students in crisp uniforms walked through massive wooden doors that Elena had only seen from the outside. She clutched her worn backpack tighter and headed toward the service entrance where her mother would be finishing her morning shift. Elena found Maria in the East Wing, carefully dusting the chess trophies in a glass display case. The golden figures gleamed under the lights, each one representing another victory by Whitmore's chess team. Elena had learned to read by studying the nameplates on these trophies during the few times Maria had to bring her to work. "Mija, you're early today," Maria said without turning around. She knew her daughter's footsteps better than her own heartbeat. "School's closed for teacher meetings," Elena replied, setting down her backpack. She stared at the chess pieces frozen in their eternal battle. "Mama, do you think I could ever play like them?" Maria's hand stopped moving across the glass. She turned to look at her 17-year-old daughter, seeing the hunger for knowledge that burned in Elena's dark eyes. It was the same look Elena had worn as a child when she taught herself to read from discarded textbooks found in the Academy's dumpster. "Chess is not just a game here, Elena. For these students, it's about status, about proving their families are better than others," Maria said softly. "But you see patterns everywhere. Remember when you were 10 and you figured out the security guard's patrol schedule just by watching for 3 days? Or when you solved that math problem your teacher couldn't answer?" Elena no remembered. She had always been different, always seeing connections that others missed. Numbers made sense to her in a way that words sometimes didn't. She could look at a math equation and see the solution like a picture in her mind. "Mr. Harrison, the chess coach, sometimes leaves books in his office," Maria whispered, glancing around to make sure they were alone. "I've seen them when I clean. Books about chess strategy, about famous players. Maybe I could borrow one for you to read." Elena's heart raced. She had watched chess matches on the old computer at the public library, memorizing the moves of grandmasters, studying their strategies until the library closed. But she had never held a real chess book in her hands. "Would you really do that?" Elena asked. "Your mind is a gift, Mija. It doesn't matter what other people think about where we come from," Maria said, placing her hand on Elena's cheek. "Promise me you'll use it." Later that morning, while Maria finished cleaning the administrative offices, Elena wandered through the halls she had only seen in glimpses. The walls were covered with portraits of distinguished alumni, men and women who had gone on to become senators, judges, and business leaders. She stopped in front of a photograph labeled Chess Champions 1995 to 2020 and studied the faces of the winners. All of them looked the same, confident, well-dressed, privileged. None of them looked like her. The sound of laughter drew her attention to a large room at the end of the hallway. Through the open door, she could see students gathered around chessboards, their expensive uniforms crisp and clean. The smell of coffee and pastries filled the air. This was clearly where the chess club met. Elena stepped closer, staying in the shadows of the doorway. She watched a tall boy with perfectly styled blonde hair defeat his opponent in what looked like only 15 moves. The other students applauded as he stood up, and bowed dramatically. Too easy, the boy said with a laugh. Thompson, you need to actually study the game if you want to challenge me. This isn't checkers. Elena found herself analyzing the position on the board. The winning player had used a classic Queen's Gambit opening, but his opponent had made a critical error on move 12, leaving his king vulnerable. She could see at least 3 different ways the losing player could have avoided defeat. Marcus Wellington always wins, whispered a girl nearby. His father hired a private chess tutor when Marcus was 5. He's been training for 12 years. Marcus Wellington. Elena recognized the name from the trophy case. He had won the state championship twice and was being recruited by Ivy League colleges. As she watched him reset the chessboard for another match, she noticed something in his movements, confidence that bordered on arrogance. Anyone else brave enough to lose to me? Marcus called out, looking around the room. Come on, don't be shy. I promise I'll go easy on you. The other students laughed, but Elena could hear the nervousness in their voices. They respected Marcus, but they also feared him. He wasn't just good at chess. He used his skill to make others feel small. Elena was so focused on watching the chess match that she didn't notice the approaching footsteps until a hand grabbed her shoulder. Excuse me, what are you doing here? Elena turned to find herself face to face with a stern-looking woman in an expensive suit. The woman's eyes moved from Elena's second-hand clothes to her worn sneakers, and her expression grew colder. Students are not allowed to wander the halls during study period, the woman said. Where's your hall pass? I'm not a student here, Elena stammered. My mother works here. She's cleaning the offices. The service entrance is on the other side of the building, the woman said sharply. Staff family members are not permitted in the academic wing. Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had known this moment would come, but the shame still hit her like a physical blow. Around her, conversations stopped as students turned to stare at the girl who clearly didn't belong. I'm sorry, Elena whispered. I was just looking for my mother. Well, you found trouble instead. Marcus Wellington's voice cut through the silence. He had left his chessboard and was walking toward them, a smirk playing on his lips. Let me guess, taking a tour of how the other half lives? Marcus, please, one of the girls said quietly. She's just lost. Lost? Marcus laughed. She's not lost. She's curious. Aren't you? He looked directly at Elena, wondering what it's like to be smart enough for a place like this, wondering if you could keep up with students who've had every advantage. Elena felt anger building in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. I was watching your chess game. Oh, she plays chess. Marcus announced to the room. How delightful. Tell me, where did you learn? The community center? Some after-school program for underprivileged kids. I taught myself, Elena said quietly. The room erupted in laughter. Marcus shook his head in apparent amazement. She taught herself, everyone. How impressive. I'm sure you're quite the little prodigy down at wherever it is you come from. Elena felt every eye in the room on her. The woman in the expensive suit was already reaching for her phone, probably to call security. The other students were whispering among themselves, some looking embarrassed for her, others enjoying the show. But something inside Elena refused to back down. Maybe it was years of watching her mother work twice as hard for half the respect. Maybe it was the way Marcus's eyes glittered with cruel amusement. Or maybe it was simply that she knew something he didn't. I could beat you, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. The laughter stopped instantly. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, his expression shifting from amusement to disbelief. I'm sorry, what did you say? Elena lifted her chin and looked him directly in the eyes. I said I could beat you at chess. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked around the room, as if checking to make sure everyone had heard what she said. Then he threw back his head and laughed harder than before. This is perfect, he said, wiping tears from his eyes. This is absolutely perfect. The cleaning lady's daughter thinks she can beat the state champion. He turned to address the room. Should we tell her about my private tutoring? About my rating? About the fact that I've never lost a match at this school? Maybe you should just let her leave, suggested the girl who had spoken up earlier. Oh no, Marcus said, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. This is too good to pass up. You want to play chess with me? Fine. Let's play chess. He gestured toward an empty board near the window. But let's make it interesting. When you lose, and you will lose, you admit in front of everyone here that you don't belong in this building. Elena felt her mouth go dry, but she nodded. And when I win, Marcus laughed again. When you win, oh, this gets better and better. Fine. When you win, which will never happen, I'll apologize to you and your mother in front of the whole school. How's that? Deal, Elena said before she could change her mind. As they walked toward the chessboard, Elena caught sight of her mother through the window. Maria was loading her cleaning supplies into a cart, probably heading to the next building. Elena wondered what her mother would think if she could see her now, about to face down the most privileged boy at the most exclusive school in the state. Marcus settled into a chair with the casual confidence of someone who had never faced real opposition. He gestured for Elena to sit across from him, his smirk never wavering. White or black? He asked. Black, Elena replied, remembering something she had read about chess psychology. The player with the black pieces had to respond to White's opening, but they also had the advantage of seeing their opponent's strategy first. Marcus nodded and moved his king's pawn forward 2 spaces, a standard opening. Elena studied the board for a long moment, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. This was her chance to prove that intelligence didn't come with a price tag, that brilliance could emerge from the most unexpected places. She moved her own king's pawn forward, mirroring his opening. The game had begun. Around them, students pulled their chairs closer to watch. The woman in the expensive suit had put away her phone, apparently deciding that the upcoming humiliation would be punishment enough. Even some students from other clubs had drifted over, drawn by the whispers of what was happening. Marcus played quickly and confidently, developing his pieces with textbook precision. Elena matched a move for move, but she was thinking several moves ahead, looking for the pattern that would give her an advantage. She had spent countless hours studying the games of masters like Garry Kasparov and Bobby Fischer, memorizing not just their moves, but their thinking patterns. By the 10th move, Marcus's smirk had faded slightly. Elena wasn't playing like a beginner. Her pieces worked together in ways that showed real understanding of chess principles. But he was still confident. He had won hundreds of games against players much better than some self-taught girl from the wrong side of town. Not bad, he admitted grudgingly as Elena castled her king to safety. You actually know some basic strategy. Where did you really learn to play? I told you, Elena replied without looking up from the board. I taught myself. Right, Marcus said. And I suppose you just naturally understood concepts that take most people years to master. Elena finally looked up at him. Did you naturally understand them? Or did someone teach them to you? A few students laughed at that, and Marcus's jaw tightened. He made his next move more aggressively, pushing one of his pawns forward to attack Elena's position. Elena saw the trap immediately. Marcus was trying to bait her into a tactical sequence that would favor his more developed pieces. Instead, she made a quiet move that seemed almost passive, positioning her knight in the center of the board. Marcus frowned at the board, studying Elena's move. It looked harmless, but something about it bothered him. The knight wasn't threatening anything immediate, but it was perfectly placed to support multiple different attacks. Interesting, he murmured, more to himself than to Elena. The room had grown completely quiet. Students who had come expecting to watch a quick humiliation were instead witnessing something they had never seen before. Someone actually challenging Marcus Wellington. The game was entering its middle phase, and Elena was not only holding her own, but beginning to seize the initiative. Elena moved her bishop, and suddenly Marcus could see the trap she had been building for the last 5 moves. His comfortable position was starting to look shaky. He studied the board more carefully, spending several minutes on his next move. Time pressure already? Elena asked quietly. I thought state champions were supposed to think faster than this. Marcus shot her a sharp look. The girl was not only playing better than expected, she was getting into his head. He made his move with more force than necessary, sliding his rook across the board with a sharp click. Elena responded instantly, as if she had been expecting exactly that move. Her queen swept across the board in a diagonal line, and suddenly Marcus realized he was in serious trouble. His king was not in immediate danger, but his entire position was under pressure. "How was she doing this?" whispered one of the watching students. Elena heard the whisper and allowed herself a small smile. She was doing this because while Marcus had learned chess from expensive tutors and private coaches, she had learned it from grandmasters. While he had studied in comfortable classrooms with every advantage, she had memorized thousands of games while sitting in a noisy public library. While he had been told he was talented, she had discovered she was brilliant. Marcus was starting to sweat. This wasn't supposed to be happening. He was Marcus Wellington III. His family had attended Whitmore Academy for 3 generations. He had been playing chess since he was 5 years old. He had private tutors, expensive chess sets, and access to every chess resource money could buy. But across from him sat a girl in second-hand clothes who was systematically dismantling his position with moves so elegant they looked effortless. The game continued, each move building the tension in the room. Elena could feel the shift in atmosphere as the students watching began to realize that the impossible might actually happen. Marcus, meanwhile, was playing more and more defensively, trying to hold his position together against Elena's mounting pressure. Finally, Elena saw her opportunity. It would take 7 moves, but she could see the path to victory as clearly as if it were drawn on the board in bright colors. She moved her queen to a square that looked almost random, but Marcus stared at it with growing horror as he began to understand what was coming. He studied the board for 10 full minutes, searching desperately for a way out of the trap Elena had constructed. The other students watched in complete silence as the great Marcus Wellington, undefeated champion of Whitmore Academy, slowly realized he was about to lose to a girl whose mother cleaned these very floors. With shaking hands, Marcus made what he knew was a hopeless move. Elena responded with swift precision, her pieces moving like dancers in perfect coordination. 3 moves later, Marcus's king had nowhere to run. "Checkmate," Elena said quietly. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Marcus stared at the board as if looking at it long enough might change the result. The other students looked from Elena to Marcus and back again, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Finally, Marcus looked up at Elena. His face was pale, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked completely unsure of himself. "Ow," he whispered. Elena met his gaze steadily. "The same way you learned," she said. "I studied. I practiced. I worked hard. The only difference is that I did it without anyone telling me I was special." She stood up from the table, her legs unsteady, but her voice clear. "I believe you owe me an apology." Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. Around them, the other students were beginning to whisper among themselves, their voices growing louder as the reality of what had happened sank in. Elena didn't wait for his response. She had proven her point, not just to Marcus, but to herself. As she walked toward the door, she heard footsteps behind her. "Wait," called the girl who had tried to defend her earlier. Elena turned to see a slim girl with kind eyes hurrying after her. "I'm Saracen." That was incredible." "Thank you," Elena said simply. "Will you come back?" Sarah asked. "To play with us again?" Elena looked back at the chess room, where Marcus was still staring at the board in shock. The woman in the expensive suit was nowhere to be seen, and the other students were gathered around the chessboard, analyzing the moves Elena had made. "I don't think I'm welcome here," Elena said. "You're welcome if I have anything to say about it," Sarah replied firmly. "What you just did, that's going to change things around here." As Elena walked through the hallways toward the service entrance where her mother would be waiting, she felt something she had never experienced before, the satisfaction of proving that brilliance had nothing to do with privilege and everything to do with determination. Behind her, in the chess room, Marcus Wellington was learning the same lesson from the opposite side. For the first time in his life, he had been outplayed, outthought, and outmatched by someone who had every reason to be inferior to him according to everything he had been taught. The game was over, but the real education was just beginning. The news of Marcus Wellington's defeat spread through Whitmore Academy like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone from the kitchen staff to the headmaster had heard about the cleaning lady's daughter who had beaten the undefeated chess champion. But Elena Rodriguez knew nothing about the storm brewing around her name as she sat in her small bedroom, replaying the match in her mind. Maria had said little when Elena told her about the game the night before. She had simply nodded and continued folding laundry, but Elena caught the small smile that tugged at the corners of her mother's mouth. Now, as Maria prepared for another day at the academy, Elena could sense her mother's nervousness. "Maybe I shouldn't go to work today," Maria said, adjusting her uniform for the third time. "Mrs. Henderson called last night. She wants to see me in her office first thing." Mrs. Henderson was the head of facilities management, the woman who supervised all the cleaning staff at Whitmore. Elena felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Mrs. Henderson was also the stern woman in the expensive suit who had found Elena in the academic wing yesterday. "This is my fault," Elena said. "I should come with you. I should explain." "No, Mija, you have school today. Your education comes first, always." Maria kissed Elena's forehead and picked up her keys. "Whatever happens, I'm proud of what you did yesterday. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of being smart." After Maria left, Elena tried to focus on her homework, but her mind kept drifting back to the chess match. She had spent the night analyzing her own play, looking for mistakes and better moves. In her head, she played the game over and over, each time finding new layers of strategy she hadn't noticed during the actual match. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she almost missed the knock at their apartment door. Elena peered through the peephole and was surprised to see Sarah Chun standing in the hallway, still wearing her Whitmore Academy uniform. "Sarah, how did you know where I live?" "I asked around," Sarah said with a slight smile. "Can I come in? I have something to tell you." Elena let her in, acutely aware of how small and shabby their apartment must look compared to the mansions where Sarah probably lived. But Sarah didn't seem to notice the secondhand furniture or the tiny kitchen. She was too excited about whatever had brought her here. "You need to hear what's been happening at school," Sarah said, setting down her expensive leather backpack. "It's chaos. Complete chaos." "What do you mean?" "Marcus hasn't shown up for classes today. His friends say he's sick, but everyone knows he's hiding. The whole chess team is talking about nothing else. Mr. Harrison, the chess coach, has been asking questions about you all morning." Elena felt her stomach tighten. "What kind of questions?" "Will you learn to play, whether you've had formal training, if you're interested in joining the chess team?" Sarah grinned. "Elena, I think they want to recruit you." "That's impossible. I'm not even a student at Whitmore." "That might be changing," Sarah said, her voice growing serious. "There's something else. My father is on the board of trustees for the academy. He came home last night talking about how there's been a chess prodigy discovered, someone with extraordinary natural talent. The board is meeting today to discuss offering a full scholarship to a promising local student." Elena stared at Sarah in disbelief. "You think they're talking about me?" "I know they are. Word of your match with Marcus reached the board by last night. They're calling it the most impressive display of chess talent they've seen in decades." Sarah leaned forward. "Elena, this could be your chance. A full scholarship to Whitmore Academy means everything: tuition, books, uniforms, even college preparation." Elena's mind raced. Whitmore Academy was one of the most prestigious schools in the state. Students who graduated from there went on to Ivy League colleges and successful careers. It was everything she had ever dreamed of, but never dared to hope for. "But what about my mother? What if they fire her because of what I did yesterday?" "They can't fire her for your chess skills," Sarah said firmly. "Besides, if you become a student at Whitmore, your mother's position becomes even more secure. The academy values family connections." A phone ringing interrupted their conversation. Elena answered to hear her mother's voice, tight with worry. "Elena, I need you to come to the academy right away. Mrs. Henderson wants to speak with both of us. Can you take the bus?" "Of course, Mama. Is everything okay?" "I don't know, Mija. Just come quickly." Elena hung up and looked at Sarah. "I have to go to the school. My mother needs me." "I'll drive you," Sarah offered immediately. "My car is downstairs." During the drive to Whitmore Academy, Sarah filled Elena in on more details about the morning's events. Apparently, several students had recorded videos of the chess match on their phones, and the footage was being shared throughout the school's social media networks. Parents were calling to ask about the mysterious chess prodigy who had defeated their children's champion. "The thing is," Sarah said as they pulled through the academy's main gates, "no one can figure out how you got so good without formal training. Marcus has been playing competitively for 12 years. He's had the best coaches money can buy. For you to beat him so decisively, it's like something out of a movie." Elena said nothing, but she understood their confusion. She had been wondering the same thing herself. Yes, she had studied chess books and watched online videos, but there was something else, something she had never told anyone. When she looked at a chessboard, she didn't see individual pieces. She saw patterns, relationships, possibilities that seemed to glow like colored lights in her mind. It was the same gift that let her solve complex math problems instantly or spot patterns in data that others missed completely. They found Maria waiting in Mrs. Henderson's office, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Mrs. Henderson sat behind her desk, but she wasn't alone. A distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit stood by the window, and Elena recognized him immediately from the portraits in the school hallway. Dr. Richard Whitmore, the headmaster. "Elena," Mrs. Henderson said as she entered, "please sit down. We have some things to discuss." Elena took the chair next to her mother, trying to read the expressions on the adults' faces. Mrs. Henderson looked stern as always, but there was something else in her eyes that Elena couldn't identify. Dr. Whitmore, meanwhile, was studying Elena with obvious curiosity. "First," Mrs. Henderson began, "I want to address yesterday's incident. Elena, you were in an area of the school where non-students are not permitted. This violated several academy policies." Elena felt her mother tense beside her. "I'm sorry. I was just—" Dr. Whitmore held up a hand. "Let me finish, please. While your presence in the academic wing was unauthorized, what happened next was quite extraordinary. Are you aware that your chess match with Marcus Wellington has become something of a sensation? Sarah told me people were talking about it." "More than talking," Dr. Whitmore said with a slight smile. "Elena, in my 30 years as an educator, I have rarely seen such a display of raw intellectual talent. The way you played yesterday suggests abilities that go far beyond casual study." "I taught myself," Elena said quietly. "I read books from the library and watched games online." Dr. Whitmore exchanged a look with Mrs. Henderson. "Elena, I'd like to ask you a few questions if you don't mind. They might seem unusual, but please bear with me." For the next 10 minutes, Dr. Whitmore asked Elena a series of questions that seemed to have little to do with chess. He showed her patterns and asked her to identify what came next. He gave her mathematical sequences to complete. He presented her with logic puzzles that would have stumped most adults. Elena answered each question quickly and correctly, her mind automatically seeing the underlying relationships and patterns. She noticed that Dr. Whitmore was taking notes, and his expression was growing more amazed with each answer. "Remarkable," he murmured finally. "Truly remarkable." He turned to Maria. "Mrs. Rodriguez, has Elena ever been tested for giftedness? Has anyone in the educational system recognized her abilities?" Maria shook her head. "Her teachers say she's smart, but the school has so many students. No one ever suggested testing." "I see." Dr. Whitmore set down his pen and looked directly at Elena. "Elena, I believe you have what we call exceptional intellectual abilities. Your chess victory yesterday wasn't just luck or good study habits. It was a demonstration of genuine genius-level thinking." Elena felt her heart racing. The word genius seemed too big, too important to apply to her. "Which brings me to why we asked you here today," Dr. Whitmore continued. "Whitmore Academy has a tradition of identifying and nurturing exceptional talent, regardless of a student's background. We would like to offer you a full scholarship to attend our school." The silence that followed was deafening. Elena looked at her mother, whose eyes were wide with shock. Mrs. Henderson was nodding approvingly, and Dr. Whitmore was waiting patiently for their response. "A full scholarship?" Maria whispered. "Everything," Tuition, books, uniforms, supplies, everything Elena would need to succeed here. We would also provide additional support, including advanced placement courses and enrichment opportunities that would prepare her for the most competitive colleges in the country. Elena felt like she was dreaming. This was everything she had ever wanted, but never believed possible. But something nagged at her, a concern she couldn't ignore. "What about Marcus?" she asked. "And the other students? They won't be happy about this." Dr. Whitmore's expression grew serious. "Marcus Wellington is dealing with some difficult emotions right now. Yesterday's match was a humbling experience for him, and perhaps a necessary one. As for the other students, they will adjust. Excelencia recognizes excelencia, Elena. Those who matter will respect your abilities. There is one condition," Mrs. Henderson added. "You will be expected to join the chess team and compete at the state and national level. Your talent is too valuable to waste." Elena looked at her mother, seeing years of struggle and sacrifice reflected in Maria's eyes. This scholarship wasn't just about Elena. It was about changing the entire trajectory of their family's future. "I need to think about it," Elena said finally. "Of course," Dr. Whitmore said. "This is a life-changing decision. Take the weekend to discuss it with your family. But, Elena, I hope you'll seriously consider this opportunity. Students with your abilities come along perhaps once in a generation." As they left the office, Elena's mind was spinning. In the span of 24 hours, she had gone from being an invisible girl watching through windows to being recruited by one of the most exclusive schools in the country. Sarah was waiting for them in the parking lot, practically bouncing with excitement. "Well, what happened? Please tell me it's good news." "They offered me a scholarship," Elena said, still not quite believing it herself. Sarah let out a whoop of joy that echoed across the parking lot. "I knew it. This is incredible, Elena. You're going to be a Whitmore student." But Elena was looking past Sarah toward the chess room window where she could see students gathered around the boards. Somewhere in that building was Marcus Wellington, probably still trying to understand how his perfect world had been shattered by a girl he had dismissed as inferior. Elena wondered what it would be like to walk those halls every day as a student instead of a visitor. Would she be accepted, or would she always be seen as the scholarship girl who didn't really belong? Could she handle the pressure of living up to everyone's expectations while representing everything she had never been allowed to be? As they drove away from the academy, Elena realized that her chess match with Marcus had been more than just a game. It had been the opening move in a much larger and more complex match, one that would determine not just her own future, but challenge everything Whitmore Academy thought it knew about talent, privilege, and worth. The real game was just beginning, and Elena was no longer content to watch from the sidelines. She was ready to play for everything that mattered. But first, she had to decide if she was brave enough to accept the invitation to the table where the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined possible. The next move was hers, and whatever she chose would change her life forever. Elena Rodriguez stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the crisp white collar of her new Whitmore Academy uniform. The navy blazer with its gold emblem felt foreign on her shoulders, like wearing someone else's skin. After 3 sleepless nights of discussion with her mother, she had made her decision. Today would be her first day as a Whitmore student. The weekend had been a whirlwind of paperwork, measurements for uniforms, and meetings with academic counselors. Dr. Whitmore had personally overseen Elena's placement, ensuring she would be enrolled in the most challenging courses the academy offered. Her schedule included advanced placement calculus, honors chemistry, college-level literature, and, of course, daily chess team practice. Maria watched from the doorway, her cleaning uniform already on for her own workday at the academy. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. They would both be going to the same building, but Elena would enter through the front doors while Maria still used the service entrance. "You look beautiful, Mija," Maria said softly. "Like you belong there." Elena turned from the mirror. "Imskared, mama. What if I can't keep up? What if the other students make my life miserable?" "Then you'll handle it the same way you handled Marcus Wellington," Maria replied firmly. "With your intelligence and your strength. Remember, They need you more than you need them. You proved that already. The ride to school in Sarah's car felt different this time. Instead of sneaking through service doors, Elena would walk through the main entrance with every other student. Sarah chattered nervously about Elena's schedule, pointing out which teachers were favorites and which ones to avoid, but Elena was only half listening. Her attention was focused on the imposing brick building growing larger ahead of them. "Are you ready for this?" Sarah asked as they pulled into the student parking lot. Elena took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." The morning crowd of students moved in familiar patterns across the campus grounds. Elena noticed how they clustered in social groups that seemed as rigid as chess formations. The athletes near the gymnasium steps, the drama students by the arts building, the academic elite gathered around the main entrance. She wondered where she would fit in this carefully organized social hierarchy. As Elena and Sarah approached the main doors, conversations gradually quieted. Students who had heard about the famous chess match turned to stare at the girl who had defeated their champion. Elena kept her chin up and her eyes forward, refusing to show the nervousness that was making her stomach flutter. "Elena Rodriguez." A cheerful voice called out just as they reached the entrance. Elena turned to see a woman in her 50s approaching with a warm smile. She had graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and the confident bearing of someone used to being in charge. "I'm Mrs. Patterson, your academic advisor," the woman said, extending her hand. "Dr. Whitmore asked me to meet you this morning and help you navigate your first day." Elena shook the offered hand gratefully. "Thank you. I'm a little overwhelmed." "Perfectly normal," Mrs. Patterson assured her. "Starting at a new school is challenging enough without all the extra attention you've been receiving. Come, let me show you to your first class." As they walked through the hallways Elena had only glimpsed before, Mrs. Patterson explained the academy's expectations and traditions. The academic standards were rigorous, she said, but Elena's placement test scores suggested she would have no trouble keeping up. "Your mathematics score was particularly impressive," Mrs. Patterson noted as they stopped outside a classroom door. "Mr. Jennings, your calculus teacher, is quite excited to work with you." Elena's first class was Advanced Placement Calculus, traditionally reserved for seniors who had already completed several years of advanced mathematics. As she entered the classroom, she felt the familiar sensation of being studied and evaluated. 15 students looked up from their textbooks to examine the newcomer who had somehow skipped directly into their elite academic circle. Mr. Jennings was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who gestured for Elena to take an empty seat in the front row. "Class, we have a new student joining us today. Elena Rodriguez comes to us with exceptional mathematical abilities, and I'm looking forward to seeing what she can contribute to our discussions." The lesson that day focused on differential equations, concepts that Elena had encountered in her independent reading but never studied formally. As Mr. Jennings worked through complex problems on the whiteboard, Elena found herself automatically seeing the patterns and relationships that led to solutions. When he asked the class to solve a particularly challenging equation, Elena's hand shot up before she could stop herself. "Yes, Elena." Elena stood and approached the board, working through the problem with quick, confident strokes. Her solution was not only correct, but demonstrated a level of mathematical intuition that impressed both the teacher and her classmates. "Excellent work," Mr. Jennings said with obvious pleasure. "You've just solved a problem that typically takes students several attempts to master." During the break between classes, Elena found herself surrounded by curious classmates asking questions about her background and how she had learned mathematics so advanced for someone her age. She answered politely, but kept her responses brief, still uncertain about how much of herself to reveal. Her second class was honors chemistry, where she met Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, a woman whose reputation for brilliance was matched only by her reputation for demanding perfection from her students. Dr. Morrison barely acknowledged Elena's presence, launching immediately into a lecture about chemical bonding that assumed students already possessed extensive background knowledge. Elena listened intently, taking careful notes and asking herself the same question that had been nagging at her all morning. Could she really compete at this level? These students have been preparing for advanced coursework their entire academic lives. They spoke casually about concepts she had only read about in library books. But as the class progressed, Elena began to recognize something familiar in the chemical formulas and molecular structures Dr. Morrison was discussing. They were patterns, just like the patterns in chess positions or mathematical equations. Once she understood the underlying logic, the rest began to fall into place with startling clarity. When Dr. Morrison posed a question about predicting the products of a complex chemical reaction, Elena found herself raising her hand again. The reaction should produce two primary compounds, Elena said when called upon, with the possibility of a third minor product depending on temperature and pressure conditions. Dr. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Can you explain your reasoning? Elena approached the whiteboard and began sketching molecular diagrams, showing how the reactants would combine based on their electron configurations and bonding patterns. Her explanation was clear and accurate, demonstrating an understanding of chemical principles that went beyond simple memorization. Very good, Dr. Morrison said with a slight nod of approval. You have an excellent grasp of the underlying logic of chemical interactions. By lunchtime, word of Elena's academic performance was spreading through the school. Students who had been merely curious about the chess prodigy were now talking about the girl who was excelling in the most challenging classes Whitmore offered. Elena sat with Sarah in the elegant dining hall, trying to process everything she had experienced in just one morning. The food was better than anything her school cafeteria had ever served, and the conversations happening around them covered topics ranging from college applications to family vacation plans in Europe. How are you feeling? Sarah asked, noticing Elena's thoughtful expression. Like I'm in the right place and the wrong place at the same time, Elena replied honestly. The academics are challenging, but manageable. It's everything else that feels overwhelming. What do you mean? Elena gestured around the dining hall. Listen to them talk. Summer homes in the Hamptons, private tutors, trips to Paris. I've never been outside this state, Sarah. How am I supposed to relate to people whose lives are so different from mine? You relate to them through your mind, Sarah said firmly. These students respect intelligence above everything else. You've already proven you belong here academically. The rest is just details. Elena wasn't convinced, but she appreciated Sarah's optimism. As they finished lunch, she noticed Marcus Wellington sitting at a table across the room. He hadn't spoken to her or even made eye contact since she arrived, but she could feel his presence like a storm cloud on the horizon. Her afternoon classes continued the pattern established in the morning. College-level literature challenged her to analyze complex texts and engage in sophisticated discussions about themes and historical context. Elena discovered that her habit of reading everything she could get her hands on had given her a broader knowledge base than she realized. When her English teacher, M.S. Rodriguez, no relation, despite the shared surname, assigned an impromptu essay on the role of social class in Victorian literature, Elena wrote with passion about characters who struggled against the limitations imposed by their birth circumstances. Her essay drew connections between historical fiction and contemporary reality that impressed both her teacher and her classmates. But it was her final class of the day that Elena had been both anticipating and dreading: chess team practice with Mr. Harrison. The chess room looked different now that Elena was officially part of the academy community. The trophy case that had once represented an impossible dream now represented a challenge she was expected to help the team achieve. Mr. Harrison, a soft-spoken man in his 60s, welcomed Elena warmly. I've been coaching chess for 25 years, he told her, as the other team members assembled around various chessboards. I've worked with talented students, dedicated students, and naturally gifted students. But I've never encountered someone who combines all three qualities the way you do. Elena felt the weight of expectation in his words. The other team members were watching her with expressions that ranged from curious to skeptical to openly hostile. Marcus was notably absent, which Elena found both relieving and concerning. I'd like you to play a few games against different team members, Mr. Harrison continued. Nothing too formal, just a chance for everyone to get acquainted with your playing style. Over the next hour, Elena played 4 different opponents, winning all 4 games with varying degrees of difficulty. Each match taught her something about her new teammates, their strengths, their weaknesses, and their attitudes toward the newcomer who was disrupting their established order. Her final opponent was David Chun, Sarah's older brother and the team's previous second-ranked player. David was a methodical player who relied on careful preparation and solid positional understanding. Elena found his style challenging in a different way than Marcus's aggressive tactics. You play like you see the entire game at once, David observed after Elena had won their match. Most of us think 1 move at a time, maybe 2 or 3 moves ahead. You seem to see patterns that won't emerge for dozens of moves. Elena considered his observation. I guess I do see patterns differently than most people. It's not just in chess, it's in mathematics, in chemistry, in literature. Everything seems connected somehow. That's what makes you special, Mr. Harrison said, overhearing their conversation. Most chess players develop their skills through study and practice. You have something much rarer, genuine chess intuition combined with the ability to calculate complex variations. As practice ended and students began packing up their chess sets, Elena realized she had successfully completed her first day at Whitmore Academy. She had proven herself academically, made initial connections with her teammates, and begun to understand the complex social dynamics that governed this elite educational environment. But she also knew that her real challenges were just beginning. Marcus Wellington was still somewhere in the building, probably planning his response to her presence. The other students were still evaluating whether she truly belonged among them. And Elena herself was still figuring out how to balance her loyalty to her mother and her working-class roots with her new opportunity to succeed in a world of privilege. As she walked toward the main entrance to meet Sarah for the ride home, Elena passed her mother mopping the floors in the main hallway. Their eyes met briefly, and Elena saw pride mixed with concern in Maria's expression. "How was your first day, Mija?" Maria asked quietly. "Complicated," Elena replied honestly, "but I think I can handle it." "I know you can," Maria said with a smile. "You're stronger than you realize." Elena hugged her mother briefly, aware that other students were watching, but no longer caring what they thought. She was Elena Rodriguez, daughter of Maria Rodriguez, scholar and chess player, and she belonged wherever her talents could take her. The first day was over, but Elena understood that she was only at the beginning of a much longer and more complex game. At Whitmore Academy, chess was just the beginning. The real competition would be for respect, acceptance, and the right to succeed on her own terms in a world that had never been designed for someone like her. But Elena had already proven that she could win games nobody expected her to play. Now she had to prove she could win them consistently, gracefully, and without losing sight of who she really was. 3 months had passed since Elena Rodriguez first walked through the front doors of Whitmore Academy as a student. In that time, she had transformed from an outsider looking in to one of the most respected students in the school. Her academic performance was flawless, straight A's in the most challenging courses the academy offered. Her chess skills had only grown stronger under Mr. Harrison's guidance. But most importantly, she had begun to find her place in the complex social ecosystem of elite education. The transformation wasn't just academic. Elena carried herself differently now, with the quiet confidence that comes from proving yourself repeatedly in demanding circumstances. She had learned to navigate conversations about summer plans in Europe and family connections to famous universities. She had mastered the subtle social codes that governed interactions among Whitmore's privileged students. But she had done all of this without losing sight of who she was or where she came from. Her friendship with Sarah Chun had deepened into something genuine and lasting. Sarah had introduced Elena to a group of students who valued intellectual curiosity over family wealth, creating a social circle where Elena felt truly comfortable. David Chun had become not just a chess teammate, but a study partner whose methodical approach to learning complemented Elena's intuitive brilliance. Even her relationship with her mother had evolved. Maria still worked as a cleaner at Whitmore, but the other staff members now treated her with increased respect. Having a daughter who was excelling at the academy had elevated Maria's status in ways both subtle and significant. But there was one relationship that remained unresolved, one source of tension that cast a shadow over Elena's success. Marcus Wellington had returned to school after his brief absence, but he was a changed person. The arrogant boy who had mocked Elena that first day had been replaced by someone quieter, more thoughtful, and considerably more complex. Marcus still played chess, but he no longer dominated the team the way he once had. Elena had quickly established herself as the team's top player, while Marcus had settled into the role of second board. To his credit, he had accepted this demotion with grace, but Elena could sense the struggle beneath his composed exterior. The two of them had maintained a careful distance from each other, speaking only when necessary for team coordination. Their interactions were polite, but strained, like former enemies who had agreed to a ceasefire without ever addressing the underlying conflict. This delicate balance was about to be shattered by an announcement that would change everything. Elena was in the chess room after regular practice, working through a complex endgame position, when Mr. Harrison approached her with an expression of barely contained excitement. "Elena, I have news that I think will interest you," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "I've just received confirmation that Whitmore Academy has been invited to participate in the National Scholastic Chess Championship." Elena looked up from the chessboard, her attention fully focused now. She had heard about the National Championship. It was the most prestigious high school chess competition in the country, featuring the strongest teams from elite schools across America. "That's wonderful," she said. "When is it?" 6 weeks from now, in Washington, D.C. The competition lasts 4 days and includes both individual and team competitions. "Elena, this is the opportunity we've been preparing for. With your abilities anchoring our team, I believe we have a real chance to compete for the national title." Elena felt a thrill of excitement mixed with nervousness. She had been playing competitively for only 3 months, despite her obvious talent. The national championship would put her against players who had been training for this moment their entire lives. "Who else will be on the team?" she asked. "The team consists of 4 players plus 1 alternate. Based on current rankings, it would be you on first board, Marcus on second, David Chin on third, and Jennifer Walsh on fourth. The alternate position is still being decided." Elena nodded, but she was thinking about the implications of this team composition. She would be playing first board, the highest pressure position, where she would face the strongest players from every other team. And Marcus would be directly behind her in the lineup, their complex relationship now carrying the weight of the school's championship hopes. "Mr. Harrison," Elena said carefully, "what does Marcus think about this arrangement?" The chess coach studied her for a moment before answering. "Marcus has been struggling with his changed role on the team, but he's also been working harder than ever to improve his game. I believe the pressure of the national championship will bring out the best in all of you." That evening, Elena stayed late in the library to research previous national championships, studying the games of past winners and analyzing the strategies that had proven successful at the highest level of scholastic competition. She was so absorbed in her research that she didn't notice someone approaching her table until a familiar voice interrupted her concentration. "Studying the competition already?" Elena looked up to see Marcus Wellington standing beside her table, carrying a stack of chess books. For the first time in months, he was addressing her directly, and his tone carried none of the hostility or arrogance she remembered from their first encounter. "I want to be prepared," she replied simply. Marcus gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Mind if I sit? I think we need to talk." Elena nodded, closing her laptop to give him her full attention. Marcus had changed significantly over the past 3 months. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by something more mature and introspective. He had grown taller, and there was a seriousness in his expression that made him look older than his 17 years. "I owe you an apology," Marcus began without preamble. "Actually, I owe you several apologies." The way I treated you that first day was unacceptable. The things I said about you and your mother were cruel and wrong." Elena had imagined this conversation many times, but she hadn't expected it to begin so directly. "Why now?" she asked. "Why are you apologizing now?" Marcus looked down at his hands before answering. "Because I've spent the last 3 months trying to understand how you beat me so easily, and I've learned some uncomfortable truths about myself in the process." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I was raised to believe that success was something I deserved because of who my family is, what schools I attended, how much money my parents spent on tutors and coaches. When you defeated me, you didn't just win a chess game. You destroyed everything I thought I knew about talent and worth." Elena listened without interrupting, recognizing the difficulty it must be taking for Marcus to admit these things. "I spent weeks angry at you, angry at the situation, angry at myself," Marcus continued. "But then I started really studying your games, trying to understand how you think. And I realized that you have something I've never had, genuine love for the game itself. You don't play chess to prove you're better than other people. You play because you see beauty in the patterns, elegance in the strategy. And you don't?" Elena asked. Marcus shook his head slowly. "I play to win. I played to maintain my reputation. I played because everyone expected me to be the best. But I don't think I ever really played for joy." He looked directly at Elena. "Watching you play has taught me what that looks like." Elena felt something shift in her understanding of Marcus. The boy who had mocked her months ago was revealing depths she hadn't suspected existed. "The national championship," Marcus continued, "it's going to be the biggest challenge any of us has ever faced. The competition will be incredibly strong. I want you to know that you'll have my complete support. Whatever our personal history, I want our team to succeed." "Thank you," Elena said. "That means more than you might realize." Marcus stood to leave, but turned back one more time. "Elena, can I ask you something? How do you do it? How do you see so many moves ahead?" Elena considered the question carefully. It was something she had never really explained to anyone, not even to herself. "I don't think in terms of individual moves," she said finally. "I see the whole position as a living thing, with pieces that want to be in certain places, patterns that want to complete themselves. It's like reading a story where you can see how the characters need to develop for the plot to make sense." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's what I thought. You see chess as an art form, not just a competition. Don't you?" "I'm learning to," Marcus replied. "Maybe you could teach me sometime." After Marcus left, Elena sat in the empty library thinking about their conversation. The boy who had once seemed like her enemy was revealing himself to be more complex and thoughtful than she had imagined. She wondered if this change in Marcus was genuine, or if it was simply a strategic move in a larger game she didn't fully understand. Over the following weeks, as the team prepared for the national championship, Elena watched Marcus carefully. His behavior supported his words. He was supportive, encouraging, and genuinely invested in the team's success. During practice sessions, he offered thoughtful analysis of Elena's games without trying to undermine her position as first board. More surprisingly, he began asking Elena for advice on his own games, genuinely interested in learning from her approach to chess strategy. Their conversations gradually moved beyond chess to other topics: literature, mathematics, their hopes for college, and careers. Elena found herself beginning to like Marcus as a person, which confused her more than she cared to admit. It was easier to think of him as an opponent than to acknowledge that he was becoming something like a friend. 3 weeks before the national championship, Mr. Harrison arranged for the team to play a practice match against the chess team from Metropolitan Academy, their traditional rivals and the defending state champions. The match would give them experience playing under pressure conditions similar to what they would face at nationals. Elena's opponent was Patricia Coleman, Metropolitan's first board player and a nationally ranked expert who had been playing competitive chess for 8 years. The game was Elena's first real test against a player of truly elite caliber. The match was played in Whitmore's main auditorium, with students and faculty gathered to watch. Elena felt the familiar pre-game nervousness, but also a new kind of excitement. This was what she had been preparing for, the chance to test herself against the very best players her age. Patricia Coleman proved to be everything Elena had expected and more. She played with precision and depth that forced Elena to calculate more carefully than she ever had before. The position became increasingly complex as both players maneuvered for advantage in a strategic battle that showcased the highest level of scholastic chess. For 3 hours, neither player could gain a decisive advantage. Elena found herself impressed by Patricia's technique and strategic understanding. This was what elite chess looked like. Not the flashy tactics that impress spectators, but subtle positional play that required deep understanding of chess principles. Finally, in a complex rook and pawn endgame, Elena found the key move that would give her a winning advantage. It was a quiet positional sacrifice that created passed pawns on the king side while tying down Patricia's pieces to defensive duties. Patricia studied the position for 15 minutes before extending her hand in resignation. "Beautifully played," she said with genuine respect. That endgame technique was masterful. Elena had won the game, but more importantly, she had proven to herself that she could compete successfully against nationally ranked players. As she shook hands with her opponent, she felt Marcus's eyes on her from across the room. When she looked over, he was smiling with what appeared to be genuine pride in her accomplishment. After the match, as the teams were shaking hands and discussing the games, Patricia Coleman approached Elena privately. "I wanted to tell you something," Patricia said quietly. "I've been playing competitive chess for 8 years. I've played against hundreds of strong players, including several who went on to become masters. But I've never encountered anyone who plays with your combination of tactical brilliance and positional understanding. You have a very special talent." "Thank you," Elena replied. "You played an incredible game. I learned a lot." Patricia smiled. "You'll do well at nationals. Just remember, at that level, it's not just about chess ability. It's about handling pressure, maintaining focus, and believing in yourself when everyone is watching." As Elena walked home that evening, she reflected on Patricia's words. The national championship was now just 3 weeks away, and she was beginning to understand the magnitude of what she was attempting. She wasn't just representing herself. She was representing Whitmore Academy, her teammates, and, in some ways, everyone who had ever been underestimated because of their background. But she was also representing something more personal, the idea that genius could emerge from anywhere, that talent didn't require privilege, and that the most powerful moves sometimes came from the most unexpected players. The championship would be her chance to prove those beliefs on the biggest stage scholastic chess had to offer. Elena Rodriguez, daughter of a cleaning lady, was about to compete for a national title. The game of her life was about to begin. The hotel ballroom in Washington, D.C. buzzed with nervous energy as 300 of the nation's strongest high school chess players prepared for the opening ceremony of the National Scholastic Chess Championship. Elena Rodriguez stood with her Whitmore Academy teammates, trying to process the magnitude of what she was about to experience. The past week had been a whirlwind of final preparations, travel arrangements, and media attention that Elena hadn't expected. Local newspapers had picked up the story of the cleaning lady's daughter, who had earned a place on one of the most prestigious prep school teams in the country. ESPN had even sent a reporter to interview her about her rapid rise to elite-level competition. But standing in that ballroom, surrounded by players who had been training for this moment their entire lives, Elena felt the familiar mixture of excitement and terror that had become her constant companion since arriving at Whitmore Academy. "Look around," Mr. Harrison said quietly to his team. "These are the best young chess minds in America. Some of them will go on to become grandmasters. Others will use the analytical skills they've developed here to become leaders in business, science, and government. You belong here with them." Elena scanned the room, recognizing faces from chess magazines and online tournament reports. Patricia Coleman was there with her Metropolitan Academy team, looking confident and composed. Near the registration table stood Alexander Petrov from California Chess Academy, a player who had already achieved a master rating and was considered the top prospect for the individual championship. "Nervous?" Marcus asked, stepping up beside Elena. Terrified, she admitted, but excited too. Their relationship had continued to evolve over the past 3 weeks. What had started as a cautious truce had developed into something that felt like genuine friendship. Marcus had proven himself to be both supportive and insightful, offering strategic advice and emotional encouragement as Elena prepared for the biggest challenge of her chess career. I've been thinking about something, Marcus said. When you beat me that first day, you changed my whole perspective on chess. I want you to know that whatever happens this week, you've already accomplished something extraordinary. Elena looked at him with surprise. The Marcus Wellington who had mocked her months ago seemed like a completely different person from the thoughtful young man standing beside her now. Thank you, she said. That means everything to me. The opening ceremony featured speeches from chess officials, sponsors, and former champions who emphasized the importance of sportsmanship and the life lessons that chess competition provided. Elena listened intently, but her mind was already focused on the games that would begin the next morning. The tournament format was demanding, 5 rounds over 4 days, with each round consisting of games at all 4 board positions. The team standings would be determined by combining results from all 4 boards, while individual awards would be given to the top performers at each position. That evening, as Elena reviewed her opening preparation in her hotel room, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. Less than 4 months ago, she had been an unknown girl watching chess games through a window. Now she was preparing to compete against the strongest players in the country for a national championship. Her mother had wanted to come to Washington to watch, but the cost was too high and she couldn't afford to take time off work. Instead, Maria had hugged Elena tightly at the airport and whispered words that Elena carried with her. Play with all your heart, Mija. Show them what we're made of. The first round began at 9 o'clock the next morning. Elena's opponent was Michael Chun, no relation to Sarah and David, the first board player from Texas Chess Academy, and a player rated nearly 200 points higher than Elena. As she sat down at the board and shook hands with her opponent, Elena felt the familiar clarity that came over her when she was about to play chess. The game began with Michael playing the Queen's Gambit, the same opening that Marcus had used in their first encounter. But Elena was no longer the untested player who had relied purely on intuition. Her months of training with Mr. Harrison had given her a deep understanding of opening theory and in-game technique to complement her natural tactical ability. For 30 moves, the position remained roughly equal as both players maneuvered for advantage. Elena could feel the strength of her opponent. His moves were precise, purposeful, and backed by years of serious study. But she could also sense that Michael was playing somewhat cautiously, perhaps influenced by her reputation as an unpredictable tactical player. The breakthrough came on move 31, when Elena spotted a subtle tactical sequence that would allow her to win the exchange, trading her bishop for Michael's rook. The combination was 7 moves deep and required precise calculation, but Elena could see it as clearly as if the moves were highlighted on the board. She played the initial move and watched as understanding dawned in Michael's eyes. He spent 20 minutes trying to find a defense, but the tactics were sound. When he finally made his next move, Elena executed the combination flawlessly, emerging with a decisive material advantage. The endgame required careful technique, but Elena had studied rook and pawn endings extensively. 20 moves later, Michael resigned with a gracious handshake and words of respect for Elena's tactical vision. "That was beautifully calculated," he said. "I never saw that combination coming." Elena's victory was one of 3 wins for Whitmore Academy in the first round. Marcus had also won his game with solid positional play, while David Chun had drawn a difficult position against a stronger opponent. Jennifer Walsh had lost a hard-fought game, but the team's overall result of 2.5 out of 4 points put them in excellent position for the remaining rounds. The second round brought Elena her most challenging opponent yet, Sofia Kozlov from New York Chess Academy, a player who had already earned a Woman International Master title and was considered one of the strongest female players in the country. Sofia was known for her aggressive attacking style, and her ability to create complications even in seemingly simple positions. The game that followed was unlike anything Elena had experienced before. Sophia played with relentless pressure, constantly creating threats and forcing Elena to find precise defensive moves. For 3 hours, the position teetered on the edge of decisive advantage for one side or the other. Elena found herself pushed to her absolute limits, calculating variations deeper and faster than she ever had before. Sophia's attacks were brilliant and creative, but Elena's defensive resources proved equal to every challenge. Gradually, as the position simplified, Elena began to seize the initiative. The turning point came when Sophia, perhaps growing impatient with Elena's stubborn defense, overextended her attack and allowed Elena to launch a counterattack against Sophia's exposed king. Elena's pieces coordinated beautifully as she built up overwhelming pressure on the king's side. When Sophia finally resigned, both players were exhausted from the intensity of the struggle. Sophia stood and embraced Elena across the chessboard, a gesture of respect between competitors who had pushed each other to their absolute best. "You play with incredible fighting spirit," Sophia said. "I wish you the best for the rest of the tournament." Elena's second victory, combined with wins by Marcus and David Chun, put Whitmore Academy at the top of the team standings after 2 rounds. The chess media covering the tournament was beginning to take notice of Elena's perfect score and the surprising strength of the Whitmore team. The third round brought additional pressure as Elena faced her toughest opponent yet, Alexander Petrov, the player many considered the favorite for the individual championship. Alexander was not only highly rated, but also experienced in major tournaments, having represented the United States in international youth competitions. The game against Alexander would test everything Elena had learned about competitive chess. Alexander played with the confidence of someone who had never encountered a position he couldn't handle. His opening preparation was flawless, his middle game technique was precise, and his endgame knowledge was encyclopedic. For the first time in the tournament, Elena found herself in a clearly inferior position. Alexander had gained a small but persistent advantage in the opening, and he was gradually increasing the pressure while giving Elena no opportunities for counterplay. As the position grew more difficult, Elena forced herself to remain calm and look for the kinds of tactics and combinations that had made her reputation. But Alexander was too experienced to allow obvious tactical shots, and Elena found herself fighting simply to maintain equality. The game reached a rook endgame, where Alexander held a slight advantage, an extra pawn in a position where Elena's defensive technique would be severely tested. For 2 hours, she held the position with precise defensive moves, never allowing Alexander to make progress despite his theoretical advantage. Finally, after 5 hours of play, Alexander offered draw. Elena accepted gratefully, knowing that a draw against the tournament favorite was an excellent result that kept her in contention for both individual and team honors. "You defended that endgame perfectly," Alexander told her after they had signed the score sheets. "I thought I could win that position, but you found all the best defensive moves." Elena's draw, combined with victories by her teammates, kept Whitmore Academy at the top of the team standings with 1 round remaining. Elena's individual score of 2.5 out of 3 points left her tied for first place in the individual competition. The final round would determine both the team and individual championships. Elena's opponent was Jennifer Park from California Chess Academy, another strong player who was also in contention for individual honors. The stakes could not have been higher. Elena needed a win or draw to secure first place individually, while the team needed a strong showing to clinch the team championship. As Elena sat down for her final game, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. In 9 months, she had gone from being an unknown girl who taught herself chess to competing for a national championship. Win or lose, she had already proven everything she needed to prove about talent, determination, and the power of pursuing your dreams against impossible odds. The final game was a masterpiece of strategic chess. Both players understood the importance of the game and played with careful precision, avoiding unnecessary risks while looking for opportunities to gain advantage. Elena chose an opening that led to rich positional play rather than sharp tactical battles, trusting in her strategic understanding to guide her through the complex middle game positions that arose. For 4 hours, neither player could gain a decisive advantage. The position remained balanced as both players demonstrated the highest level of chess technique. Elena felt completely in her element, seeing patterns and possibilities with crystal clarity. The decisive moment came when Jennifer made a subtle positional error, allowing Elena to gain control of a key square in the center of the board. Elena's pieces coordinated beautifully as she built up pressure against Jennifer's position, gradually transforming her small advantage into something concrete. When Jennifer's position finally collapsed, Elena felt a rush of emotion unlike anything she had ever experienced. She had not just won the game. She had won the individual championship at the National Scholastic Chess Championship. As the other games finished and the final team standings were calculated, Elena learned that Whitmore Academy had also won the team championship, with Elena's perfect individual score leading the way. The awards ceremony that evening was a blur of congratulations, photographs, and interviews. Elena stood on the podium holding her individual championship trophy, flanked by Marcus, David, and Jennifer with the team championship trophy. Mr. Harrison was beaming with pride, and Elena could see tears of joy in his eyes. But the moment that meant the most to Elena came when she called her mother from the hotel room later that night. "Mija, I'm so proud of you." Maria's voice was thick with emotion. "You did it. You really did it." "We did it, Mama," Elena corrected. "None of this would have been possible without everything you sacrificed for me." As Elena lay in bed that night, clutching her championship trophy, she thought about everything that had led to this moment. The girl who had once pressed her face against the windows of Whitmore Academy was now the National Scholastic Chess Champion. She had proven that genius could emerge from anywhere, that talent didn't require privilege, and that the most powerful moves sometimes came from the most unexpected players. But more than that, she had discovered who she really was. Elena Rodriguez was not just a chess player or a scholarship student or the daughter of a cleaning lady. She was all of those things, and more, a young woman who had refused to be limited by other people's expectations, who had embraced her gifts while staying true to her values, and who had learned that the greatest victories come not from defeating others, but from becoming the best version of yourself. The championship was over, but Elena's real game, the game of life, was just beginning, and she was ready to play it with all the courage, intelligence, and heart she possessed. She had learned to believe in herself completely, and that was a victory that no opponent could ever take away. The maid's daughter had become a champion, but more importantly, she had discovered.